A happy Labor Day weekend to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in for a look at your extended weekend forecast. Going to go over our latest run of Future View, and we're going to talk about what's in store over the course of specific events this weekend, football being one of the main talking points. And we'll go into not only the second half of your 7-day forecast, but beyond that and try to get a general prediction about maybe a warming trend, maybe getting some 90s back in the forecast. We'll answer all those questions here in your extended weekend forecast. So let's kick it off with Future View. As we go across the day on Friday, the rain chances are lessening. So it does look like we have some spots of potential clearing as we go into the evening hours. A couple of stray light showers, but this is right there around tailgate time for all the high school football games. Maybe bring the rain jacket just in case, but overall anything in the way of rain should be pretty short-lived, and it should be a very light shower at that. That will continue into the nighttime hours. Still going to have some showers present, not necessarily right over Washington County at 8 p.m., but we are just going to mainly have the potential for lighter rain, along with plenty of cloud cover as we head into your Friday evening and Friday night plans. But then it looks like the rain sticks around into the overnight hours. So by the time you are waking up and maybe heading out the door pretty early on Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning, a couple of showers and some pockets of heavier and steadier rain are going to be possible. I wouldn't even throw it out of the realm of possibility to see a couple of thunderstorms. And when I say thunderstorms, I'm just talking about a couple rumbles of thunder. You're going to notice some heavy rain for a couple of minutes, maybe hear things get a little bit loud, maybe see a couple of stray flashes of lightning, but we're not looking at anything in the way of severe weather forecasted, even if you do catch a thunderstorm. And then after we go past lunchtime on Saturday, very similar to the pattern that is setting up for Friday. Friday morning was very, very dreary, and it had widespread rain on the satellite and radar image. Well, steadily getting better as we go into the afternoon, evening, and nighttime hours. That's the same story for your Saturday. By the time we go into 7 p.m., we're almost completely getting rid of that rain. It does look like finally by about the midnight hour, everything fizzles out. But not only just the rain, the cloud cover looks to fizzle out for a short period of time before we welcome it back in the picture for Sunday morning. So if you're staying here in town, maybe heading out to church on Sunday morning around 7 a.m., a couple of stray showers were going to be possible. It looks like we just got a new update in real time according to Future View. So now it is looking like most of the day on Sunday is going to be trending mostly dry. Once again, I think you still are going to have a rain chance, but it's mainly going to be of the light shower variety, maybe just simply a drizzle, maybe just simply a sprinkle. But conditions get better and better as you go across this weekend into Sunday, and then we'll talk about Labor Day itself when we pick it up with the long-range models in just a little bit. So over the next 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the first 3 days of the 4-day weekend, or your first 2 days of the 3-day weekend, Saturday and Sunday, however you want to phrase it, you can see high temperatures still somewhere in the 80s. They will be a little bit lower the more cloud cover and rain that you have on Saturday, and morning low temperatures are going to start out somewhere in the upper 60s, maybe get down into the mid 60s. It will still have a pretty pleasant feel in the air, but cloud cover and rain typically limit the range that we see. So obviously on a crystal clear day, you'd have temperatures get a little bit lower during the overnight hours, and then you would have your high temperatures get a little bit higher in the afternoon. So you'd have more of a temperature spread and a temperature range throughout the day. Well, it kind of limits that, and that shrinks that range that we do have in terms of the morning low and the afternoon high. You can see 68 to 80, so that's only a difference of 12 degrees on Saturday and about a 40% chance of seeing a shower, maybe a low-end storm. However, you don't see a thunderstorm icon on Sunday or even for Friday. Doesn't look like we're going to have anything in the way of thunderstorms necessarily, but like I said, it's not going to be anything in the way of severe weather. You should plan on and off rain throughout Friday and Saturday plans that are going to be outdoors, but I think conditions will be improving as we go into the second half of Saturday all the way into Sunday. The good news is we have seen some changes with this muggy meter. If you've been tuning into my extended forecast this past week, it did look like Saturday and Sunday were going to be the most humid of the bunch in terms of some dew point temperatures that could be in the 70s, some that could be in the upper 60s. Well, it actually looks like all weekend long we'll see a steady downtick in the humidity levels into the beginning of next week, and I think that's really going to help limit the rain chances for the beginning of the week next week, whether that's the holiday on Monday or that's going to be the beginning of your shortened work week on Tuesday. It looks like we see a slight uptick on Wednesday, which you will see that correlates with the long-range models in just a little bit. And then another bit of a downtick by the time we go into Thursday. But decreasing moisture levels, it's feeling less and less muggy day by day going across your 3-day weekend. Something we will have to keep on lookout for. Here's a look at your excessive rainfall outlook. We do have a marginal risk, not only for Friday, not only for Saturday, but this is going to be valid all the way through Sunday. Looking out for maybe a stray flash flood warning or two. That's typically what happens when we go through these rainy and dreary stretches. Anything that pops up in the way of rain, especially thunderstorms, kind of sit over the same area for a prolonged period of time. It can lead to the ponding of water in low-lying areas that don't drain well. So of course, make sure to look out and try to avoid those puddles that you can on the roads, because they can be a lot deeper than they appear sometimes. But if you absolutely can't avoid them, make sure you're taking it very slow if you have to drive through it. And if you do see a lot of puddles over a roadway, maybe a dirt road, it's best not to try to drive through that, because obviously those can lead to washouts of those roads a lot quicker, especially if they're not built with proper asphalt and the proper ingredients that you typically see on I-75 and some of your main roadways. Here's a look at your Future View rainfall graphic. So this is going to go along with what the latest run of Future View did just come up with. And you can see this is not too much rain whatsoever. So this makes me very happy and very confident that hopefully we won't see anything in the way of those flash flood warnings, especially if we're only going to get a couple tenths of an inch of rain in a select few areas. But it's going to really be those areas that receive heavy rainfall, and they kind of just see heavy shower after heavy shower that can continue to lead to increased totals, and that can pop up in very isolated areas. So that's what we're looking out for, those isolated flash flood warnings, if you are to get more rain than is suitable. So football Friday night forecast. Take a look at these temperatures. This is something you do not see at the end of August whatsoever. How about starting out in the 70s from tailgate time and continuing to see that number get a little bit lower as we go into the nighttime hours? But once again, at all times, whether it's tailgate, whether it's the first, second quarter, or you're getting into the second half of the game, mostly cloudy skies at the minimum, and then maybe the chance of a very stray and a very brief shower in nature. So it's best to just bring the rain jacket out to the football field tonight. And if you don't have any need for it, not a bad thing whatsoever. At least you came prepared, because the last thing you want is to have a shower come across your area and then to get soaking wet and have to sit in those wet bleachers for a couple of hours until the football game does wrap up. And then we transition into Saturday. Yes, I have been talking about football for quite a while here on this extended forecast. The Georgia Bulldogs, hence why I have the red and black tie on, kicking off the season up in Athens at Sanford Stadium against Marshall. Marshall, pretty solid team last year. They finished 10-3. I know they have a lot of transfers coming in, but so do the Dogs, and I know all of you are so excited to watch the Bulldogs, whether it's here back at home in Central Georgia or it's going to be up in Athens at Sanford Stadium. So the game kicking off at 3:30 on Saturday, 12 p.m. around tailgate, 77 degrees. Most of the cloud cover staying in the picture should keep the numbers right there around 80, maybe a couple degrees below 80 degrees, but you shouldn't see too much temperature variation throughout the afternoon into the evening hours up in Athens tomorrow. You have the chance of a shower, but I think those chances for rain are going to be earlier in the day. Very similar to our forecast down here. It looks like conditions are going to start clearing out as you go into the afternoon hours up in Athens. And by the time maybe you're heading home, or maybe you're staying up in Athens to celebrate downtown and go out to eat with your family and celebrate the win, more sunshine should be present right before you get into sunset time, which will be at 8:01 in Athens on Saturday. But if you are staying here, Mercer kicking off the season. Mercer football is the only team in the nation, and I think maybe one of the only teams ever, that has played a football game and still has a record of 0-0. Yes, last week's competition against UC Davis over in Montgomery had a lightning delay. Very unfortunate, because it looked like Mercer was kind of weaseling their way back into that ball game, blocking a field goal with the chance to take the lead. But the rain was pretty heavy. There was lots of lightning in the area. They deemed it a no contest. Wanted to get both of those teams back to their respective locations for this week. And obviously UC Davis, that's California Davis, they had a longer hike to get back over there. versus Samford tomorrow, or excuse me, it is not against Samford. I forgot to change that name. Mercer will be playing Presbyterian College, and that kickoff will be at 6 p.m. at Five Star Stadium. Temperatures starting out somewhere in the low 70s, and by the time you go into final score time in the fourth quarter, maybe even getting into an overtime, you actually should see the numbers dip into the upper 60s and probably going to remain somewhere around that number as you go into the overnight hours. Sunset tomorrow at Five Star Stadium will be at 8:02 p.m. So yes, it is going to be an eventful weekend in terms of some football. But many of you, it's kind of that last weekend that you can really go to your warm weather destinations for Labor Day. This kind of officially marks the end of summer, although we will continue to stay in the summer season until we get into the end of September. Labor Day travel forecast. There was typical traffic on Wednesday and Thursday, some moderate congestion during that afternoon time frame. But going into Friday and Saturday, those are going to be the busiest traffic days. So whether you're heading out of town, you're watching this on Friday afternoon before you head out of town later on Friday evening, or if you're heading out of town on Saturday, you are going to expect some heavier congestion from about the noon window until you get into the evening time frame until maybe 8 or 6 p.m. And then Sunday and Monday looking like the best of the bunch. And not quite sure if I agree with this according to the GDOT website, because Labor Day itself on Monday, I think it's going to be a pretty busy traffic day because many of you are probably heading back to work on Tuesday. But the GDOT website has said that they do forecast some light traffic. Don't be surprised if you see some moderate congestion, that typical traffic that we are anticipating for Tuesday. Somewhere in that afternoon into evening time frame is going to probably be one of the worser times, or not as good times to be out on the roads, because obviously many people are starting to get back closer to home as you go into the late afternoon and evening hours. I would suggest maybe waking up early, packing up your things, and trying to get an early start to the day so you can get home a little bit earlier and avoid any of these traffic concerns. But this is the forecast according to the Georgia Department of Transportation. Make sure that you're just being very careful on the roads, because it is a very highly traveled weekend all across the country. So obviously, yes, you want to avoid as many other people that you can, but as long as you take it a little bit slower, you're being extra cautious of your surroundings, you should be good to go. In terms of your grill cast for Labor Day weekend, at least for Friday and Saturday, I do have yellow spatulas, and we only have 3 boxes on this graphic. I guess I could have added another one. But Sunday, green spatulas looking pretty good to go. You may catch a very stray sprinkle, but it's going to be a very brief shower that I did mention, and that is going to be the same forecast for your Monday as we go into Labor Day itself, trying to have that last-minute cookout before heading back to school and heading back to work. So my recommended weekend attire, don't go anywhere without the rain gear on Friday and Saturday. But for Sunday and Monday, I think you're pretty good with some short sleeves, maybe even some shorts, bathing suit trunks, sunglasses. Although the temperatures are going to be a little bit cooler than we have been used to. So if it is a little bit too cool, somewhere in the 70s, you can go ahead and put on maybe some form of a light pullover, maybe even put on some pants if that's what you're really thinking, but not forecasting it to be chilly like it was many days over the mornings this past week. I think you're going to be good to go. It's going to be some very pleasant feeling weather, and it's not going to be overly hot and overly humid like we're so used to at the end of the month of August. So I did tell you we'll pick it up with the long-range models. Here is Labor Day itself. There is rain all in the vicinity of the southeast, so that is worth noting. You could run into some showers, maybe even a thunderstorm if you are making your way back home, say from down in Jacksonville going to St. Augustine. There could be some showers present in southern Georgia, northern Florida. You're coming back in from the north, maybe went up to Nashville for the weekend. Does look like there's a good cluster of rain up in Tennessee. But here in central Georgia, things do look predominantly clear, besides maybe a couple of those light drizzle showers like I was referring to. Again, the humidity levels are going to continue to tick down day by day as we go into Monday, so I don't really think we'll have the most conducive environment for some rain. Here's Tuesday afternoon, that first day back to work and school for many of you. Still remaining predominantly dry. Wouldn't doubt that some of this rain could creep closer into our neck of the woods by the time we go into Tuesday afternoon. But note there is a lot of rain over to the west of us, back into states like Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, western Tennessee. Well, that wave does eventually make its way into the state of Georgia, and it looks like Wednesday is going to be a pretty messy day, and that's why we saw that uptick in humidity on the Muggy meter. So you should plan on Wednesday being a pretty dreary forecast, and then as we go into Thursday, conditions look to clear out. GFS right here in green trying to hint at a couple of scattered shower chances still remaining in the forecast, but take a look at this. It has been rain chance after rain chance, and I know Frank, I know the sports team, they have been telling us here on the weather team, can we have one Friday without some rain chances? We're going to keep our fingers crossed that this solution does come to fruition, but obviously this is a week out. A lot can change until we get to that point, but it's a very pleasant sight to see because most of the eastern half of the United States does not have anything in the way of rain, and if you do, it's maybe some minuscule chances that you see the European shading in blue right there. So hopefully finally we get a dry FFN in the forecast, but when we have this drier weather, you know that your numbers are probably going to warm up very steadily. So here's a look at your morning low temperatures as we go into the beginning of next week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not much variation. The big thing I want to get across with this is all of these numbers are below your average low of 69 degrees this time of year. So somewhere in the mid 60s, maybe into the low 60s, maybe even having a bit of a chill in the air as you walk out the door. We're still keeping those below average temperatures in the forecast for not only your morning lows, but also your afternoon highs. Fluctuating from the low to the mid 80s. This is a very similar graphic actually. Now that I think about it, we did have some mid 60s and down to some low 60s for your morning lows and then back up into the mid 60s. Same exact thing with your afternoon high temperatures. All of these numbers are hovering at least around 6 to 7, maybe even 8 degrees below average. So still no 90s in sight as we go into the second half of your 7-day forecast. But let's go a little bit farther than that. Let's go into September 5th all the way through the 11th. So September 5th is going to be next Friday, and then this is going to go all the way well into the next week after that. It does look like maybe some near normal temperatures, and now near normal this time of year, once again, that average low around 68 degrees. I imagine it'll probably go down into about 69 degrees it is right now, but it will go down to about 68 degrees by the time we get to this time period. And your average high this time of year is 91 degrees, and I imagine that will go down to about 90 degrees. So it does look like, yes, some 90s could be in store as we go into your extended forecast, but it's a pretty fine gradient that we do see. Northern Georgia, a probability of being below average. Down in southern Georgia, northern Florida, a good probability of being above average. So we'll probably be somewhere right there around the 90-degree mark as we go into that first week of September. And then we'll talk about the precipitation chances for that same time window, the 5th through the 11th of September. Near normal for rainfall just to the northwest of us, but as you go down towards the south and the southeast, it definitely looks like coastal areas are forecasted to see their fair share of rainfall over the foreseeable future. But right here, we're just one category away from near normal. So a very slim and a very slight probability that we'll see some above average rainfall totals as we go into that time window. This would maybe not be the best thing because August has been a very wet month. We'll talk more about that when we get to some of the rainfall graphics. But we have plenty to look forward to. Labor Day, of course, going to be the most immediate thing. So the first 3-day weekend of the school year for many kids. I know many of you have been looking forward to this since you walked back into the classroom for the very first day of school. Peak of hurricane season is actually very fastly approaching on September 10th. We'll do some tropics talk in this extended forecast as well. First day of fall is officially going to be on September 22nd. Now that's the first official date of the fall season. Now meteorological fall is actually going to kick off on Labor Day itself as we roll into the first day of September. That is going to be the start of meteorological fall. So meteorological seasons are going to start at the beginning of months. So September, October, and November is going to be your meteorological fall. Then December 1st is going to be meteorological winter. It's just normally about 20 days ahead of the official change of the seasons. And then this is a fun thing that I get to put on here. The start of the Georgia National Fair. That will be on October 2nd. So obviously if you're looking for your next break from school, that is going to be it. Somewhere right there around fall break time. The fair will get going on a Thursday. Not quite sure how many people have off on that Friday, but I do know fall break will be that following week. typically all the school districts like to line it up with the fair. So all the kiddos have the chance to go out to the Georgia National Fairgrounds and have plenty of fun, whether that's eating all of the very tasty food, maybe not necessarily too good for you, but it's very tasty, and the fair only comes once a year, so you have to spoil yourself. Going to see the petting zoo or just riding some rides and spending some time with friends and family. It is just an absolutely splendid event each and every year. And then I know after the start of the fair, typically once we go into the middle portion of the month of October, that's when the cooler temperatures really settle in for good. So we'll probably have some false falls just like we've had very recently in between now and then, but then after the fair, I do believe we'll officially settle into the fall season as we go well into the month of October and creep closer to Halloween at the end of October. So the tropics have been relatively quiet this week thus far, but we do have another wave that we are monitoring that is moving off the coast of Africa right now. It's this very wide yellow shaded area. Obviously, you can probably pick apart what doesn't look like the globe model that we have on this graphic. And this update is as of 8 a.m. on Friday. So we'll get these updates 4 times a day, if it is to maintain some pretty strong chances of development. But as of 8 a.m. on Friday, 30% chance of developing over the next week. And that has only seen a slight uptick from 20% since it first got outlined. There's no chance of this developing over the next 48 hours. And if this is to get its act together and maybe have a path over here into the southeast, which is definitely not set in stone, the path of this potential system is definitely still very, very widely unknown. But it does look like it will be a week and a half, 2 weeks before we even need to talk about any potential impacts if it were to come over to central Georgia. But it's not coming over to central Georgia. This is something we'll continue to keep a close eye on. Again, it's got to form into a named storm before we really even start to give it more attention. So taking a look at your hurricane basin or Atlantic basin names for the hurricane season, we had Tropical Storm Fernan over the past week, and yes, Fernan was a fish storm, moved up into the North Atlantic Ocean, but that was the 6th name that we crossed off the list so far. The next name would be Gabrielle, so that's going to be the 7th named storm. May seem like we're kind of behind schedule, and obviously I told you we're approaching the peak of hurricane season coming up on September 10th. It may seem like, yes, it's not really that active. Maybe it's not going to be as bad of a hurricane season. But remember last year, we had a very, very quiet month of August in terms of hurricane season. Then once we got into September, the activity ramped up exponentially. So we could see a very similar situation happen once again. Not to say that just because you get a late start to the race doesn't mean that you can finish above average like last year's hurricane season did. So of course, it's something we'll continue to keep you updated on. I always do a tropics update every single day in my extended forecast. So make it a point to tune in at 10:30 each and every weekday or watch the replay throughout the day. Maybe if you get home in the afternoon, want to know what's going on with the tropics, I'll always be doing a daily update on these extended forecasts. And now let's talk a little bit of rainfall, because August has been a very, very, very wet month. Obviously, we're in the very wet category, so you can get the hint of that. But one very just doesn't really do it justice. There have been more days that we've recorded rain in the month of August than remained dry. And this isn't even taking into account Friday morning's rainfall thus far. I imagine maybe a couple tenths of an inch, maybe about a ½ inch of rain that we probably saw at Middle Georgia Regional Airport on Friday morning, and still have some rain chances in the forecast for your Saturday morning. So once we add those totals, I imagine we'll probably cross the 10-inch mark for the month of August. So that is already a very wet month. You see, on average, we typically just get over 4 inches of rain in the month of August all time, but we're getting very, very close to that record back in 2004. Now, very thankfully, the month of August has about 2 or 3 days left. Doesn't quite look like we're going to break any records, but to get within an inch or two of the record is definitely telling you that it's been a very wet month of August. And taking a look at 2025 as a whole, you may remember me talking about some of those rainfall graphics in the month of July, because July was actually a very, very dry month. Well, we've definitely canceled out that red box there as you go into the month of August. Take a look at this. We are almost 6 inches above where we should be at this point at the end of August. So I think it's about 3.99 inches of rain that we are forecasted to typically see on average as of August 28th. And of course, that number gets closer to that 4.2 number that I did just show you as you do all the totals for those last couple of days of August, but still August a very, very wet month, and it's nearly double what we did have in the month of May and the month of June, which we already thought were pretty wet months. We had a lot of systems come through in the months of May and June. And then obviously the beginning of the year, not quite active. We were actually fairly close to average for all months, January all the way to April, at least when you compare it to some of these totals that you are seeing on the graphic. But about 1.5 inches below average in the month of January, nearly 2 inches below average in the month of February. Got the year of 2025 off to a very dry start, and then we didn't do too much in terms of maybe helping out that average. We were hovering well below average after the month of February. Didn't put too much of a dent in that number. We were still in the negative category for March and April. May and June helped put us back above average. July really substantially lessened that number. We got really close to average for the year of 2025, for the year of 2025 as a whole after the month of July. And then August has just seen a very drastic uptick. This number that you see in the top left of your screen, we are 7 inches above where we should be this time of year for a calendar date. So January all the way to this point in August, average rainfall from all the records that we've taken all time. Back in the late 1800s, we're hovering 7 inches of rain above where we should be. So yes, been a very wet year of 2025 so far, and we haven't had to talk about this really whatsoever. The drought monitor that we get updated every Tuesday, they release it out every Thursday. So this is as of August 26th. All you see are some abnormally dry areas up around the metro Atlanta area, just to the east of us, down I-16, and then a little bit of a shade down there in southwest Georgia. Overall, this hasn't been a big talking point because we've gotten so much rain in 2025. We were talking about this drought monitor quite frequently in the year of 2024 because we had plenty of stretches where we went without rain, most notably almost the entire month of October without receiving rain after Hurricane Helene did come through last year. So that's going to do it for your extended weekend forecast. Hopefully that's going to help you plan out all of the fun that you have planned for any Labor Day weekend plans with friends, with family. Again, keep that rain jacket handy for Friday and Saturday. Then I think you're good to go without it for Sunday and Monday as those rain chances lessen. And then after that, it does look like we get into the next most substantial rain chance going into Wednesday next week. So obviously make it a point to tune in Monday, 10:30, watch the replay whenever you get back into town, or you can tune in on Tuesday at 10:30, and I'll be breaking down everything that you need to know in your daily extended forecast. Thanks for tuning in, and have a safe and fun Labor Day weekend, Central Georgia.